He's saying the link is not opening.
No, that's the only link I put. Ask him to try again. Sometimes his links they create a problem. See, if I put another link, then it will create another problem. Then we'll have to start all over again. Just ask him to try. Yeah, he has come, Prashant.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's come. Okay, then let's start off. Um, we were yesterday we were talking about the whole idea of the social contractualists, and let me tell you that the social contractualists uh, contribution to the emergence of the modern state, the idea of constitutionalism, all these has been perhaps in India a little undervalued. Okay, because we just teach them like they are, they are a few among many, which is not true. They all have a special place. Okay, each of them is different. Locke is not like Hobbes. Rousseau is not like Locke and Hobbes. And each of them brings to us a certain kind of a perspective which helps us to understand ourselves better. To understand ourselves, meaning not our individual self, but the self in the sense of the country, the political system. Okay, please remember that the constitution is a contract. We, the people of India, or what is there in the United States, we, the people of the United States of America. What does that signify? It signifies a contract. We have agreed. Okay, we have agreed to do this, to have this as our constitution. So it is supposed to be the reflection of the will of the people, right? Now, but this is coming too much ahead. Let's not do that. But I'm just giving that as an example to tell you how much of the influence of the contractualists is there even today in our lives. Now, Hobbes should be seen as a part of the Enlightenment tradition. Yesterday, I was talking to you about the Enlightenment tradition got cut off abruptly. Um, Hobbes, when you talk about the Enlightenment tradition actually happened with the uh, Renaissance. And the home of the Renaissance was Italy. Renaissance, Renaissance, I told you in English, will become Renaissance. Renaissance is Re-Nascence. Renaissance is rebirth. It is not birth. Rebirth. So rebirth of what is a question that I was trying to answer yesterday. It is the rebirth of the classical learning of the antiquity. And you have to write antiquity with a capital A, and please don't confuse it for the whiskey that is available in the market. It's a pretty costly whiskey, I'm told, but that's not what I have in mind when I say antiquity. Antiquity refers to Greece, ancient Greece, when it is written with a capital A. Okay. And I've deliberately told you about the Milesians, which, and specifically about Anaximander and how much of an influence he's had on the modern period. Okay. And also Plato and Aristotle. They are people who have had tremendous influence on Niccolo Machiavelli. Though people say that, his philosophy is not like that of Aristotle and that of Plato, which is true. His philosophy or whatever, he's hardly a philosopher. He was more about writing a thing about how to govern. But the idea that there is a political sphere, despite there being no polis in the city-states of Italy during Machiavelli's period, you find that this idea came from classical antiquity. So these people are all part of the Enlightenment tradition. So what is the Enlightenment tradition? I told you that the Dark Ages are the Middle Ages or the medieval period. Why? Because people did not allow anyone to think. Okay? They did not allow anyone to think rationally for themselves and understand things. They said rationality, if you're having it or you're trying to use it, you're under the influence of Satan and therefore you're a heretic and you were punished. And I told you, Galileo, who we say invented the telescope and said that the earth is not the center of the universe, but it is the sun which is the center of the universe. He was almost put to death. He had to apologize when he was right. He had to apologize and say, I'm sorry, I was under the influence of the devil, and I'm therefore I made this mistake. So fearing that he would cause havoc in society, he was isolated from society. Copernicus, Kepler, mathematicians, they were also isolated. Okay. But the Enlightenment tradition brought forward this entire knowledge, and whatever the Greeks were experimenting on once again became the weapons to experiment on for people of science. There is an expression called the Renaissance man. The Renaissance man, I gave you that example of Alberti, okay, where he said the Renaissance man is somebody, I mean, God has created man in his own image, that is in God's image. He has given him great intelligence and rationality and the power to tame 1,000 wild horses. This, I told you, is a spirit of humanism, saying that the human being is endowed with a great capacity. He's endowed with a great capacity to do a lot of things. Okay, to do a lot of things by using his rationality. So celebration of the human being's abilities of different varieties is called humanism. And I also told you that two Christian priests, Desiderius Erasmus and Ulrich Zwingli, I'm sure you studied about these people in your school, when you did Renaissance, these people were also humanists. And I told you, please separate this from humanitarianism. Humanitarian aid is when you say somebody is in great difficulties. So you empathize with people while they are in trouble and you help them out. That is humanitarian. That is very different from humanism. Humanism is the belief that man is capable of a lot of great things. So, if the Christian civilization in the medieval period created a God-centric universe, thanks to the humanists and specifically to Machiavelli, we have the recreation of what the sophists, you remember, we had discussed the sophists before we started off Plato, and I said I'll mention them again. The sophists had created a man-centric universe, okay, which is the sophists believed in the unlimited potential of the human being to do things. I gave you the examples of how the sophists stitched their own clothes, they weaved their own cloth, made their own shoes. They did everything, and they said there's nothing man cannot do. This is the celebration of the human being's ability. And this is called the man-centric universe. It's a metaphor. It's not a literal thing like sun-centric universe. Okay? It's not like that. It's a metaphor. METAPHOR. So it's a man-centric universe. From being a God-centric universe, the Enlightenment tradition comes back to a man-centric universe. Here is the celebration of the abilities of man. This is what we find in the Enlightenment tradition. And this particular tradition, it is one of those strange quirks of history. This particular tradition, despite having its birth in Italy, or the city states that we today call Italy, this had its impact in Great Britain or England, if you like. Okay. And somehow that is because of the Reformation and the conversion of the entire country to Protestantism by King Henry VIII. I cannot tell you this story. If you give me another day, I can explain the story of the Reformation and what Max Weber calls the emergence of the Protestant ethic, which is also a result of the Enlightenment tradition. Okay, and I can tell you about how that led to the Industrial Revolution. We talk about Industrial Revolution. Tell me, what is the Industrial Revolution? Does any one of you really know what the Industrial Revolution is? What did it do? How did industries come into being? I spend a lot of time usually telling that story because that is extremely important in understanding how England has been able to dominate the world. A small little nation, not even on the main continent of Europe, an island. This little island had the Industrial Revolution and it dominated the world. The Spaniards thought they can dominate the world, but the British taught them a lesson. They said, you can't, we will. That's because they had the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so if you're interested, please give me time one day for one class for that. And I will tell you the story of the Reformation and how that led to the Industrial Revolution. Okay. And the Enlightenment tradition focuses upon rationality of the human being. Here, this is a slight deviation, but I'm going to tell you this story. This has to be told to you, because unless I tell you this story, you're not going to understand Hobbes and Locke properly. This, when we talk about Renaissance, okay, this is also the time of the birth, not the rebirth, the birth of the first scientific method. Okay, the first scientific method in the University of Padua in Italy. So, what is this method? This method is called the resolutive compositive method. RESOLUTIVE, resolutive, COMPOSITE, compositive, resolutive compositive method. What does this mean? The Paduans, we don't know their individual names, like the partisans of the Imperium. We don't know their individual names. But the Paduans took that proposition that was being used by the Christian thinkers, that if you did not create something, then you cannot understand it. So they said, you didn't create the universe. The universe was created by God, and therefore only God can understand his creation. Since you didn't create that, you will not understand it. So have faith. Don't use rationality. That is what they said. God will reveal knowledge, revelation. The Bible is considered a revelation. The Quran is considered a revelation. The Talmud and the Torah are considered a revelation, to be revelations. God telling people what knowledge is. Supposed to be the spoken word of God, which it is not, we know today. But the Paduans picked this proposition up. And what did they do? They found at that time someone actually invented a clock, CLOCK. Okay, please remember one thing. When anything new is invented, then it is huge. It's very big. Okay. If you go to the Birla Science Museum in Hyderabad on that Kala Pahad, then, or is it on Naubat Pahad? I think it's on Naubat Pahad. Yeah, there are two hills adjacent to each other. You'll find one computer from 1968 donated by Usmania University to that particular museum. It's a science museum. That computer is the size of, if you've seen our MA classrooms, it will barely fit into that. Barely it will fit into that. And it had a memory which was 1,000th of what your cell phone has. Okay. So when you invent something new, it is big, always big. With time, it keeps going smaller and smaller. You people wouldn't have seen it. I have. When the first cell phones came to India, they were this big. They were this big, okay? And they didn't have cameras, none of those functions. But look at the cell phones now. Cell phones have got bigger only because you need that screen. Otherwise, your cell phone can be just this much now, by the way, because this is nanotechnology. We are in the age of nanotechnology. So with time, everything becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. They were desktop computers at one time. They have all but disappeared now. Even ancient people like me are using laptop computers. These will also go off in some time. These will also go off in some time. It will all be on the phone. Whatever you have to do on the phone. Somebody sent me a technology forward from Sweden. Now people are saying you don't even need a phone. Embed a chip in your hand and it does all the things that your phone does, including you can talk like this. It's not fiction. It is happening. Anyway, so when a new invention comes into being, it's big. So this clock was pretty big. Now the Paduans asked themselves this question. They said, we didn't invent this clock. So can we not understand it? Can we not understand how it tells time? They said, let us try. We will try and understand this thing that we have not created. So what did they do? They did what all small children do. Okay? Give a child who's about 4 or 5 years old. When you give that child something, the first thing that the child does is he'll try to tear that toy open. If it's a car that you push and it goes forward, they'll try to open that up. Even smaller children, babies, if you give them something, they first put things to their mouth. Okay? When they put things to the mouth, why are they doing that? Do they think it's something to eat? No. It is because your lips are the most sensitive part of your body. They are more sensitive than any other part of your body. So the child is trying to understand the object by putting it to the mouth. Okay, so you have to remember that the Paduans behaved like small children. They decided, let us disassemble this clock. Unlike children who will break it apart, these people were grown-ups. So what did they do? They opened it up. Okay, part by part, they opened it up. And what did they find? They found wheels, gears, pulleys, strings, needles, a dial, all these different things that go into the making of the clock they found. And they, one after another, carefully, logically saw how they were functioning, opened them all up. So this is called breaking something to its simples. And when you break something to its simples, you have to remember that you have to break it to its rock bottom simple, which means that it cannot be broken anymore. If you break it, then you damage it and you don't get any understanding. So they looked at the clock as an unintelligible complex, a complex that cannot be understood. It's a complex because it's not one part. There are several parts in it. Okay, and I want you to remember this because we return to this again in another context. In the coming context, we'll return to this again. So you will see that they said break something down to its rock bottom simples, which means that that thing cannot be broken down anymore. So the unintelligible complex is the complex that you are unable to understand, has now been disassembled to its constituent parts. It has been disassembled to its constituent parts. So what do you do now? Now you start reassembling them. Okay, you remember how you disassemble. They don't do it randomly. They did it carefully, and then they reassembled the whole clock. So once the clock had been reassembled, the Padwans had understood how the clock functions. So it became an intelligible complex, or a complex that your intelligence can understand. Intelligible comes from intelligence. Okay, it's your, it first, when you saw it, it eluded your intelligence. But when you broke it down into its simple these things, then you understood what that clock is. So it's now become an intelligible complex. So why is this method called the resolutive compositive method? The disassembly or breaking into simples, that bit is called the resolution. Or what is a resolution? A resolution, you say, you pick up a glass and say this resolution is not very good, it's not very clear. Okay, resolution is actually throwing light. The literal meaning of resolution is that. Okay, it's not like your New Year resolutions that I make, I will not eat. Not those kind of resolutions. This is a resolution. You say, I found a resolution to the problem, which means I understood the problem and therefore I can fix it. So resolution is this, breaking into simples. So it is called resolutive. This bit is the resolutive bit. What is the compositive bit? Composition. When you went to schools, I'm sure you've written compositions. What are compositions? Compositions that we write, when you say write a composition on, say, some subject, it is a stringing together of words, independent words. Okay, independent words, you string them together into sentences that make sense. Incidentally, if I say I am, that is a sentence, by the way, because it is two words. Anything that has more than one word, is a sentence. I am is a sentence. I and am. But what am I? It's an incomplete sentence. A composition is a complete sentence. So you'll also say composers of music. A.R. Rahman is a great composer of music. Why? Because he's putting musical notes which are compatible with each other. Not all musical notes are compatible with each other. He's putting together compatible musical notes and he's creating a melody. He's creating a melody, and therefore that bit of music is called composition. Composition is putting things in a meaningful manner, not just writing arbitrary, I therefore road. If you write like that, that's not a composition. Those are just arbitrary stringing of words which don't make sense. A composition has to make sense. So when you reassemble, that is the compositive bit. If the disassembly is the resolutive bit, the reassembly is the compositive bit. And therefore, this scientific method gained the name resolutive compositive method. So the Paduans said, look, we didn't invent this clock, but we can tell you very, very clearly as to how this clock functions. You have the periodic table. Some of you must have come from MPC, BIPC kind of background. You'll know that periodic table. What do we say? Is water a rock bottom simple? No. You can break water into hydrogen and oxygen in certain proportions. 1 molecule of hydrogen and 2 of water. Of oxygen. If you put them 2 together, that becomes water. Right? Today, people will tell you your body is constructed by your DNA. What are the components of the DNA? Proteins, amino acids, fatty cells. All fat is not bad. Please remember that. Only when it becomes like this, then it is bad. But otherwise, fat has a lot of good. So you need all these. And our body also is a combination of all these different things. It is also a combination of our blood. We have to be very careful. You can have an electrolyte imbalance if sodium levels fall and potassium levels go up, then you will be talking incoherently. You'll be talking about things that nobody understands because the balance of the body has been broken in the bloodstream. There's too little sodium and too much of potassium. And that is also dangerous for the heart. So that is exactly what the resolutive compositive method did. That's precisely what it did. Okay. And every scientific discovery that we have today is something that is based somehow or the other in the resolutive compositive method. This is the Enlightenment tradition, where people said, we'll understand the world for what it is. through using our intelligence. And what contributed to this, just remember, if you want, like I said, I'll take a class, separate class on that later. It is basically called the uh, Protestant ethic, which came much later. The resolutive compositive method was before the Protestant ethic came. But the Protestant ethic brought this thing, made it more widespread. And it was in England that the effects of this were felt. Because the Tudor king, King Henry VIII, said, I am no longer a subject of the Roman Church. I am now creating an alternative church, which he called the Anglican Church. So if the Roman Church is called the St. Peter's Cathedral, the seat of the Roman Church, that is, the seat of the Anglican Church is the St. Paul's Cathedral. Now, the head of the Roman Church is the Pope. But funnily, the head of the Anglican Church is the monarch of England, not a religious person. The monarch of England is the head of the Anglican Church, even today. Elizabeth II is the head of the church. She's not just the head of state. The actual religious powers are invested in the Archbishop of Canterbury, 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 because that's where the cathedral is located. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the actual head, but he has to report everything that he's doing to the monarch. He also has to take his or her permission before making announcements. And that is what set England free from the controls. Feudalism also disappeared there. That's a concomitant story, which I can tell you along with the story of the Reformation. And because of that, we had a new civilization based in the Enlightenment tradition. And what is this new civilization? This new civilization is the capitalist civilization. Till then, there was no such thing as capitalism. Capitalism came to England in the aftermath of the Reformation, the Protestant ethic, as Weber calls it, and the king taking over controls of a religious institution. And that's why that paved the way for innovation. It paved the way for innovation. England, even today, is called a nation of shopkeepers, which basically means they're capitalists. Okay, so the idea of a free market, which is one of the ideas of the political economy that we talked about yesterday of John Locke and Adam Smith, this particular idea of a free market has come from England. Not only free market, there were many frees. One of the frees, the first free that came into being was free thinking. You will decide for yourself rationally as to what you want to do with your life. You will decide what is good for you and what is not good for you. The individual will decide things for himself. The collective will not tell him what to do and what not to do. So this is free thinking. The second thing that came, please don't call it free speech. That's a wrong expression. I'll tell you that later. Free speech basically was used for the first time by Thomas Jefferson when he wrote the Declaration of Independence and presented to the King of England, where he said, the United States of America is now an independent country and will exercise free speech. What free speech meant was that they are no longer bound by what the monarch of England tells them regarding trade. They said, now we'll negotiate our own trade pacts with various different countries without your permission. We are now an independent nation. That's what the Declaration of Independence is. Okay. So there he used the term free speech. Free speech, therefore, actually means the freedom that a country has to negotiate with any other country or group or whatever for its trade. But your freedom to give your opinions on something, to agree with something or to disagree with something, that is called freedom of speech. It's not free speech. That is freedom of speech. So first you have free thinking, then you have freedom of speech. The third thing is the free will. W capital ILL. What is will? You say willpower. I have the willpower. I can withstand any much pain. You want to put pain on me? I have the willpower too, which is mental power, which is your ability to withstand anything. Okay. So when people don't die easily, even doctors say this person is not ready to die. One of my friends' father, he contracted cancer. And when he was told that he has cancer, he lost the will to live. So within 1 month, he died. He didn't suffer. That's a good thing. Okay. But that is what we mean by willpower. So free will is you will decide for yourself what you want and what you don't want. Okay. What road you will take and what road you will not take. That is free will. So that is the third freedom. And the fourth freedom is the free market. In the feudal period, market yards were designated by various feudal lords and sometimes the kings. And they also designated what kind of products can be sold in which marketplace. In which marketplace, what kind of product can be sold. And they also fixed a minimum price. There is a very big reason behind this. Maybe I'll talk about it when we come to Locke, but not now. Okay. Now, free market militates against this. It says anybody can set up any market. If you find an open space, set it up as your market. Sell any product you want there. Okay, sell any product. You don't have to say, you can't sell this here. You have to go somewhere else to sell it. No, you will not do that. You can sell it wherever you want. If there is a marketplace available, if there is space available, make it a marketplace and make it a place where you want to sell whatever products you want. Then the main component, no price fixation. Today we say consumer is king. The first person to have talked about that without using those words is Adam Smith. Okay, he said in a free market, the consumer decides how much to pay for a product. There is no price fixation. By the way, that spirit of the free market is there even today, even in a country like India, where we have added socialist through an amendment in our constitution. I don't know if you've seen these series of ads. Jago Grahak Jago. They tell that ad series tells you don't go by minimum retail price, MRP. It tells you very clearly that this MRP has been agreed upon by the sellers of that particular product. They have decided that they will sell it at that basic minimum price. Okay, you don't have to accept it. You can bargain. You can bargain. And since in my house we buy medicines by tons every month, without asking, my medical shop gives me 25% discount on the MRP without my asking. Because we buy, in fact, he's a very nice person. Otherwise, he might suspect that I'm buying these and selling them. I buy medicine in such big quantities. So, free market doesn't have price fixation. And that is also, that spirit is still there even in a country that has proclaimed itself as a socialist country, which it is not anymore anyway. But there is the idea of a free market. It has not been realized anywhere else, but people have not given up on the idea completely, especially in the US. But we'll talk about that later. So these four things I talked about because these are the four legs on which capitalism stands. Capitalism stands on these four legs. Okay. If you look at capitalism, what is its foundation? These are the four legs of it. Free thinking, freedom of speech, free will, and free market. This is the capitalist economy. New economy, never before seen. Why? Because in every other form of economy, you basically produce for the sake of consumption. If you want, like, say, if you have a carpenter and you want a table made, you'll go to him and say, I want a table made, or, you want to do something in your house, create wardrobes. So you'll call that person, he'll come and do it. So that is done for consumption. So when he's making a table or when he's making a wardrobe, He knows that this is going to be consumed and he'll be paid for it. But what is IKEA doing? IKEA has set up the biggest store in India in Hyderabad. I was stunned to find out that people come from as far as Delhi, Amritsar to buy things in IKEA in Hyderabad. What do? They manufacture furniture and leave it there, and you say, I want this, you go pick it up. There are furniture malls. There are all kinds of malls now. So what are all these things? These are all things which are capitalism. In capitalism, you anticipate demand and then you create your products. You don't go to buy a two-wheeler and say, I want a two-wheeler, and they'll say, okay, it'll take some time to make your two-wheeler. Come back after that. No, you want to buy it immediately. If brand X is not able to give you what you want, then you'll say, I'll go to brand Y. Let me see. If that is readily available, then I'll buy that. That is free market. That is capitalism. So you produce primarily for the sake of profit. Those of you who are doing economics, I think all of you are doing economics, must have gone through this. Surplus value, how is it extracted, and how that the basis of all profit is surplus value. I'm sure you've gone through this. I don't need to tell you that. Okay, so capitalism is something which is unprecedented, where you are producing in anticipation of demand. At the time of Dhanteras, which is just a few days before, what do we say, Diwali, people have to buy some metal. And therefore, you will find that the automobile industry, cars, motorcycles, all these are all produced in big numbers and sent to the dealers 2 months in advance. They start the process. Why? Because on the day of Dhanteras, they want to buy. And that day, if you can't sell, then you've lost an opportunity. So they build an inventory, as it is called, a stock, and keep it ready for people to come, pick it up, take it and go. Take it and go. Okay? Why? Because if you're not ready, then you lose out on the profits. They may go and buy some other vehicle. So, capitalism is the civilization that came in with the modern period. And with that came the state. And even though I have called Thomas Hobbes a proto-liberal, I have said he's not a full-fledged liberal thinker. He is definitely a modern thinker. Why? Because he talks about a social contract. What is a contract? Please understand, a contract is a market mechanism. Okay? It's a market mechanism. When you buy a product, I bought a car in the month of September or August, I don't remember. Bought another car. And they said, if you buy now, we will give you 2 years extended warranty. Otherwise, the car comes with 3 years warranty, but we'll give you 2 years extended warranty on the car. And they also said roadside assistance is only given normally for the first 2 years, but we will give you 1 more year of free roadside assistance. And if you opt for it, 2 more years at half the price that you'll have to otherwise pay for roadside assistance. So all these are not verbally told. They are documented. The dealer signs on behalf of the manufacturer. The customer signs on behalf of himself or herself. So that's a contract. So if something goes wrong, the contract also has clauses. It will say that if it is an accident, then it won't, this warranty will not be applicable. It is only for manufacturing defects, things like that. You buy a refrigerator, you get a 2-year warranty. People will say 7-year warranty on the compressor. If anything goes wrong, we'll replace it free. What are all these? These are contracts. You're entering into the contract with the person who's selling this to you, right? So please understand that a contract is a market mechanism. It is a market mechanism. So when you talk about a social contract, it already presumes that the market has come into place, that the market has come into being. That's why they are talking about a contract. So Hobbes is very much a modern thinker because he's talking about a social contract. Let there be no doubt about that. Hobbes has started witnessing the birth of capitalism, but he didn't see it flourish as it did during Lockean times, but he has seen the appearance and growth of capitalism. So the modern society is synonymous with capitalism. Today, people will tell you China is a communist country. Don't believe it. China is state monopoly capitalism. Okay, it is state monopoly capitalism, where instead of individual entrepreneurs setting up businesses, it is the state that does it. And if you're a foreign company and you want to go and set up your business in China, then there will be an entity which is attached to the state. Okay, it is attached to the state, or it is an extension of the state, and they have to enter into a contract with that. They have to enter into a contract with that. And then it will be two companies as a joint venture. A foreign company cannot set up 100% investment like they are doing in India. In India, you can set up with 100%. Renault, Nissan, 100%. Incidentally, MG, that brand which is advertised as British, Morris Garages, it's a Chinese brand. MG is not a British brand anymore. It's made in China. In China, it's called Baojun. But what the Chinese did very smartly is that if you sell it as a Chinese product in different markets, then people won't accept it. So what they did is they bought rights of that name MG, and they manufactured those cars in China. The Tata Group also bought Jaguar Land Rover, but they didn't move the factory to India. They are there only. But the Chinese are not like that. They moved it to, they bought the brand name. They said, the rest of the stuff, do what you want to. Okay. Similarly, Benelli Motorcycles. Now they are made in Hyderabad, somewhere on the road to Medchal. It's also a company called Kiwi, which makes Benelli motorcycles. It's no longer an Italian brand. It's a Chinese brand. But people think they're buying it an Italian thing, which it is not. Okay. So there are variations of capitalism, but the world today is fully capitalist. Even when in the days when we called ourselves socialist, very seriously, even in those days, today Modi talks about Atmanirbhar. Okay, the first person to have talked about this was Jawaharlal Nehru, who said, import substitution. We shall cut down on imports and we'll have our own production. Indira Gandhi did the same thing. Indira Gandhi, in fact, was even more vocal about it. So Modi says vocal for local. You young people are thinking these are his all brilliant ideas. No, these are all old ideas of Nehru, Indira Gandhi. They were there. And we are a capitalist country. There's no doubt about that. There's no non-capitalist country anywhere in the world. It's a capitalist world because there is a world economic order, and that is a capitalist economic order. So that is the reason why we say Hobbes is a modern thinker. Not only is he a modern thinker, but he's also an individualist despite not being a full-fledged liberal thinker. Despite being only a proto-liberal thinker, he's also an individualist. In fact, many people consider him to be one of the first individualist thinkers of the modern period. And if we study the book, The Leviathan, it is in this you will find Hobbes's individualism. So what is individualism? Individualism is the opposite of what we studied in Aristotle. In Aristotle, society comes first. Aristotle says if there is no society, there is no individual. Which is like saying, if there is no army, then there is no soldier. Just imagine that there is no institution called the army. Okay, there's no army. Somebody comes and tells you I'm a soldier. And then you'll say, what is a soldier? There should be an army first. If there is an army, then you become a soldier in the army. Without an army, how can you be a soldier? So man is a social animal. So without there being a society, man cannot exist. Society comes first. Society is privileged over the individual. And that is why Aristotle said, what is good for society is good for the individual. So in Aristotle, there is no idea of individual good. All good is collective good. collective good is the good of all people. If it is good for all people, then it is good for you too. So what is good for society is necessarily good for individual. That's what Aristotle says. Hobbes disagrees. What is good for society need not be good for individual. It need not be good for the individual, which is what we also say today. It might be good for you, but it's not good for me. Okay? You said this is good for you, but why is it good for me? It's not good for me, some of the things. So keep this in your back of your mind. When we talk about Hobbes, we will be talking about this part of him being an individualist. Apart from being an individualist, he also, oh God, today it's not cutting me off. Do you have a class now?
No, sir.
No, sir, no class.
So can I carry on for a bit
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
so that I can finish off a bit?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So Hobbes believed in the fundamentality of human nature. Okay. This is something that I will discuss with you in detail at a later juncture. Hobbes talks about human beings existing in a pre-social state of nature. Okay, which means in this state of nature, there is no society. And Hobbes says life in the state of nature is a war of all against all. Okay, this is what he says. Life in the state of nature is a war of all against all because there's no society, right? And he says because of it being a war of all against all, he makes this statement that life in the state of nature is solitary, brutish, nasty, and short. This is how he characterizes life in the pre-social state of nature. Solitary, brutish, uncivilized, nasty, and short. People don't have longevity because they're fighting with each other. They die. That's what he said. And this is an argument that is an argument about the fundamentality of human nature. Okay? This is how human beings are, is what Hobbes is saying. Aristotle also had a fundamentality of human nature. But in that, what he says is sociability is fundamental to all human beings. There is no human being who is not social, not sociable. So that's also fundamentality of human nature. You say by nature all people are greedy. You must have heard of that. Many times people say that. Okay, that is fundamentality of nature, which means that people, irrespective of the region, time, anything else, They are all greedy. That's fundamentality of human nature. So Hobbes had this idea of fundamentality of human nature. This has been misconstrued by some people as his being a psychologist. Okay. People say that Hobbes is one of the earliest psychologists. He's not. Psychology is completely different from fundamentality of human nature argument. In fact, the birth of psychology happened very late in the 19th century, and somewhere towards the beginning of the 20th century. And you should basically know this. The first person who called himself a psychologist was a German, and his name is Wilhelm Wundt. Wilhelm. Wilhelm. Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt. He was the first person who called himself a psychologist. Some people say he did that in the end of the 19th century. Some people say he did that in the beginning of the 20th century. But I'll take it as a 19th century, end of the 19th century phenomenon. And the discipline of psychology to study came into being only in the 20th century. Apart from about that, you don't have to have any doubts. No universities, the ancient ones, old ones, Oxford, Cambridge, all these, Padua, none of these universities ever offered a psychology course till somewhere in the 20th century. Okay. Hobbes is also considered to be the originator of the language of natural rights. This is an extremely important point. Okay. Because this is a point that we will have to return to when we talk about utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is based in the rejection of the idea of natural rights. But the first person to talk about natural rights are rights given to man by nature. Okay. This particular language of natural rights originated with Hobbes. It was dealt with in a different manner by Locke. Hobbes saw natural rights as a problem. Locke saw it as a gift. That is the difference. But he saw this as a problem, and he believed that it was natural rights that was the reason why life was solitary, short, nasty, brutish, all those things. It is with the mention of natural rights that the language of rights of human beings took shape. The first kind of rights that people talked about are natural rights. Okay, if you look at other people now talking about human rights, that all can be traced back to natural rights. Some of them are in disagreement with natural rights. Doesn't mean that they are agreeing with them. They are in disagreement. But that does not mean that they came independently of the vocabulary of natural rights. They were very much influenced by the language of natural rights. And this language of rights is the definite beginning of individualism and modernity. So European society changed, and I'll just project it a little forward. And thanks to colonialism and the Europeans conquering all parts of the world and establishing their institutions of governance and their systems of education, we also today are individualists. Let it be very clear. When you go apply for a job, somebody says there is one job and there are 10 applicants, and you're all sitting in a room. Do you view the 9 other people as your friends? You won't. Why? Because each of those 9 people can potentially take away that job from you. So individualism is competitive. Please remember that. Individualism is competitive. Modern society is competitive. You want to write UPSC exams, right? Compete with some 2 lakh people who have applied. 2 lakh may be too small a number. I think it's 5 lakhs also, of which about 10,000 will be serious. The others are doing it because everybody else is doing it. But even that is a big number. For some 700-800 posts, if you have 10,000 serious competitors, then that is definitely a very, very big competition. Okay. So the idea of a meritocracy, only again, this is the extension of the spirit of the free market, which is those who have the best ability are the ones who will flourish. If you do not have the ability, I'm very sorry for you. Too bad. That's what individualism says. Hobbes doesn't say it, but Locke definitely says. Locke is very, very clear about that. Now, you have all these people who have given different interpretations of Hobbes. Leo Strauss, Michael Oakeshott, C.B. Macpherson is actually Crawford Brough, B-R-O-U-G-H, pronounced Brough, Macpherson, David Gauthier. They have all given different interpretations of Hobbes. Among all these people, Michael Oakeshott is the only British thinker. He's also a philosopher in his own right. Okay, apart from being a commentator on other people's philosophy, he's considered to have a philosophy of his own. C.B. Macpherson, David Gauthier are Canadian. Gauthier calls himself a Canadian American. Actually, we don't really need to distinguish too much between Canadians and Americans, because both the countries have the same international code. Like our country has 91 as the code. Okay, so when people dial India, they have to dial +91. But if you want to dial Canada or you want to dial the United States of America, it's +1. If plus is not accepted, then you'll have to say 001. Okay, so we can consider them to be the same. Leo Strauss was of German origin, but lived in America, wrote in America. He's also a philosopher in his own right. I spoke to you about Leo Strauss calling Machiavelli a preacher of evil. He also levels some accusations against Hobbes, doesn't understand him too well. For us, Oakeshott and Macpherson are important. And from among these two, Macpherson is the one who is even more important. So I have finished something today. Zoom has given me 1.5 hours. Tomorrow I shall pick up. I hope you're coming. Tomorrow is a holiday, so do you have classes with other people? Somebody?
Holiday, sir.
Yeah, it is 1st of January, right? It's a holiday. Tomorrow is a holiday. But if you want to come at 1, I have no problem. I'll schedule your class at 1.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
So you want me to schedule it at 1?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll try and finish Hobbes off. Okay, so thank you very much for your patience and your kindness in sitting through this. This is a big help because I thought I had to gloss over today. I have to thank Zoom more than anyone else. Then only I'll thank you, because if Zoom is not there, you and I can't talk. So thankfully Zoom didn't cut us off today. And that's why I was able to give you a very long explanation of the free market and the free will and all those things which are there in individualism in the modern period, which I wouldn't have been able to do if it just decided to cut us off at 40. Okay. So thank you very much. So I shall schedule tomorrow's class for 1 o'clock then.
Okay, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir. 1 o'clock is okay, or even early is also okay.
Now, if you don't have any other class, let me know by the evening. Just send me a message. If you don't have any other class, then I will schedule the class earlier. You suggest a time. You suggest a
Yes, sir.
time, because I'm taking only your class. I have no other class. So any time is okay with me. Okay. So let me know about it by evening. All right. And please do
Yes, sir.
come on Saturday also. I will be very, very grateful to you. It will help me finish the syllabus properly without compromising on teaching, on the quality of teaching, without compromising too much. There is some compromise, but I won't compromise too much. So thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you, Sai Ujwala. Very nice of all you people to come and stay so long into the lecture. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir. Take care, sir.